Hello and welcome to this energy price hikes briefing. Yes, sadly, energy prices are going up. We've already seen some announcements of price hikes, and invariably, because energy companies are like sheep, the others will bleat and follow. And this time, in a few months' time, most energy companies will have put prices up between 8 and 10% at my guess. So, what should you be doing? Well, doing a straight comparison won't do you much good at the moment. If you compare, especially from a company that's already announced price hikes, your cheapest will probably be one of those that hasn't announced price hikes, which means when it does, you could be moving out of the frying pan and into the fire to a more expensive tariff. But that doesn't mean you should be sitting on your backside and doing nothing. The big solution at the moment is locking into a cheap fixed deal, a cheap fixed deal. Some of them last a year, some of them last 4 winters until March 2017. And what a fix means, just like within mortgages, is the rate is set for that period. It will not go up, so you have surety of knowing what you're paying. And for many people, you're able to do a comparison now, find your cheapest fix, save money, and get no price hikes guaranteed. So that's the big message, and there's a message of urgency here too. And the reason for that is simple. When they launch these cheap fixes, it's normally a tranche of them, a set amount. So once it's gone, it's gone. So you've got to get that in there quickly before they get rid of it and then relaunch one with a similar name that's set at a more expensive price. Now, if you've been wondering who the lady on my left is, you're right. That's Rose, who's a member of the MSE team, because lots of you have been asking questions by Twitter, by email, by Facebook. And what I wanted to try and do, Rose has been collating those to put them together into some common questions, which I'm going to do my best to try and answer for you now. Rose.
I'm already fixed until January or April next year. Should I ditch my fix?
Oh, it's a difficult question. Look, I'll be straight with you. I don't know the answer without a crystal ball. So what I'm going to say is my best guess. But you're going to have to understand that I cannot know what's going to happen to prices in the future. The first big point is, does your existing tariff have exit penalties? Will you have to pay to leave? Some of them can be up to £100 if you're on dual fuel in total. If it does, then you would want to be sure you're making a pretty huge saving before leaving too early. By too early, that means anything before 2 weeks before the tariff ends. Because if you do it 2 weeks before, by the time the switch is processed, you'll be sure you won't be paying the exit penalties. So that's quite difficult. Certainly, if your fix ends in January, you may as well wait till December. Because while the very cheap fixes around now probably will have gone by then, there should be still some reasonably cheap fixes left. And the extra cost of the exit penalties is more than the amount that you would lose by not fixing right now. If you don't have exit penalties, well, certainly in January, because there's only a couple of months left and it takes 2 months to fix, it takes 2 months to switch tariff, I would go right now. If you want to lock into a fix, I would go right now. If it's next March, it's more of a difficult balance, but what I think overall is, it depends how keen you are to get security of prices. Certainly if you're looking at one of those 4 winters fixes till March 2017, I really don't know if they will still be available at this price by next March. So if you want long-term surety of prices, and that's what's important to you, and you don't have exit penalties, which many of you asking about next March don't because it's with EDF that you're talking about, then I'd be tempted to go now. Can't give you a guarantee there. Rose.
I've looked at fixing, but it'll cost more than I'm paying now. Should I pay more to fix?
Well, the important thing to remember is you're fixing in at a price, and unless you're with one of the companies that's put its price up, which is only SS&E of the big ones at the moment, then even if you had to pay 3 or 4% more than you are right now to fix, because your variable deal is likely to go up, well, it's worth fixing, because we're pretty sure all the big 6 will put prices up, and many of the smaller ones too. So by locking in, if it's only a couple of % more than you're paying right now, you're probably making a saving in the short term anyway. And as most of the fixes that are in my top pick fixes page via the Cheap Energy Club, where you can do a comparison and see your exact prices, don't have exit penalties, it means if things did change and you wanted to leave, well, you can do anyway, so it's not such a problem. So, is it worth paying more to fix? Probably if it's a little bit more. If it's huge amounts more, no, stick with the cheaper tariff.
Help. I've got a prepay meter. I'm not sure if I can switch.
You can switch. There's a competitive market in prepay meters, but the differences aren't as big as for people who are paying by monthly direct debit. So you can do a comparison to find your cheapest provider. There are a couple of buts, though, I'm afraid. The first problem is that when it comes to comparing prepays, if you do it right now, you've got that out of the frying pan into the fire issue. because only one of the big six has put prices up, the others are likely to follow. So you may be better off just waiting until there's a level playing field. However, if you've never switched prepay before, it is worth having a check. You could always switch again. It is quite difficult to change meter to see if you can save any money by switching. The one other thing I would say, though, is if you're considering going to a build meter, which is a normal meter where you don't pay in advance, which if you pay by monthly direct debit is substantially cheaper, and there are many more tariffs, then just get that underway as quickly as possible. As an added hint, because some providers charge you to switch meter, what you may want to do is look in our prepayment guide at those providers that will allow you to go from a prepaid meter to a normal meter for free. And the first thing you do is switch to their prepaid service and then switch to their build metering. But have a look at the Prepayment Energy How to Save guide on moneysavingexpert.com for more information on that.
I've seen fixes are all different lengths. Should I do a long fix or a short one?
Oh, where is that crystal ball when I need it? Okay, here you go. For the long fixes to be worthwhile, the following circumstances need to apply. Either prices rise by more than 10% a year, year on year. Well, they're certainly very likely to rise by around 10% a year, year on year for the next 3 or 4 years. But it could be 8% or 7%, in which case it's likely a short-term fix now would be cheaper, provided you fix again as soon as your current fix ends. Now, if you're not the type of person who'll do that, if you won't jump from cheap fix to cheap tariff, you're just thinking about comparing now and then you'll forget for a few months here and there, in which case go for a long fix. Just go for the surety of locking in now on a price, while not the very cheapest, but I know will give you a cheap deal for a few years, because that's far better than not doing anything. So that's really the big dynamic when it comes to this. If you're the type of person who's never bothered to switch before, go for a long switch, go for a long fix, because it means I can just lock in and forget about it. But if you're an energy tart who radically switches all the time and who the month before will switch, and remember the Cheap Energy Club will tell you to do so when the time is right, then you may be better off on a short-term tariff if price hikes aren't that high. It's a difficult equation. I have no problem with people wanting to ride the market fixed short for short-term savings now. But if you really want price surety, then you're probably better off biting the bullet, going for a longer one, even if in the long run it's not the very cheapest in hindsight. It means at least you've guaranteed yourself no heavy price hikes over the next 3 years.
I want to fix, but can't I just call my provider and just fix with them?
You can. I might slap your wrist if you did that. But look, this is the point. You want to lock in on the cheapest possible price for you, whether it's the cheapest one-year fix or the cheapest fix for 4 winters. You want to lock in as cheaply as possible. If you call your provider and it doesn't offer a cheap fix, you're going to be locking in at a higher rate. That's relatively pointless. So my message isn't fix. My message is grab a cheap fix, which you don't get just by calling your provider unless you're very lucky and you happen to be with one of those who's offering one of the cheapest deals.
I'm not with one of the big six. Will smaller providers be putting up their prices too?
It's very likely they will. Yes, they'll be putting up their prices, but they don't follow the time schedule as rigorously as the big six. Some might delay it. We've already heard First Utility promising not to put prices up until next March. But it has to be said often when we've heard those promises in the past, as soon as the promise ends, companies put their price up. Not saying it will, but I'm saying you have to be wary. And remember, as it takes two months to switch, if you went to First Utility now, that's only really like fixing for 4 months or something of that ilk. So I'm not sure how big a deal that is. But yes, in general, the environment is energy price hikes. Smaller providers are likely to follow the path, but just maybe not as quickly as the big ones.
OK, why doesn't one of the big six decide not to put prices up so everyone switches to them?
Because most of them have incumbent customers, and by putting prices up, they make a lot more money. In fact, they do offer not to put prices up. It's called fixing. And I've been yelling about fixing every time we've had price hikes for the last few years, on the television, in the newspapers, everywhere. And yet still, 60% of the population do not switch. So I'm afraid your theory is wrong. If they did do that, most people who don't switch still wouldn't be bothered, which is why I'm actually giving you exactly that option. I'm telling you this is a way to not have price hikes. And I hope you'll listen. So that question is a bit nebulous, if you know what I mean.
Do you think energy prices will continue to rise overall?
Yes. So what I can't predict is if in 7 months' time they'll be higher than where they are now. I mean, after the price hike. So we're going to have price hikes now. And then it may be that wholesale energy prices come down a bit and you might get 1 or 2% shaved off. The energy companies you know, for good PR, will cut their prices by 1 or 2%. But certainly, unless there is radical, huge political change, because the things that feed into price hikes are primarily the green energy and support for people on low incomes having more insulated homes. It costs energy. It's a huge fundamental part of the cost. Investment in new power stations and wholesale energy prices. It is very likely that in 4 or 5 years' time, energy prices will be 30 to 40% higher than they are right now. So we might have short-term dips. So it's like that. If you see, it's on the way up. Did I do that in camera? I might move. It's on the way up. There we go. But it could go slightly up and down within the time period. But yes, they're going up.
If I fix and I move house, can I take my fix with me?
Most fixes are portable. That's the key term. Can you port it? Most are. Just double check. I think on the Cheap Energy Club top fixes page, we tell you whether they're portable or not.
Why are big energy companies allowed to hike prices at all?
Because we sold our energy companies to the stock market about 25, 30 years ago, and we said that the job would be they were to make profits out of it. And an energy company's job isn't to keep us warm. Its job is to make money. That's what we did. We made that decision, and we had privatisation, and you know, the government got money, and lots of people made share dividends and windfalls on the back of it, and we made our bed, and now we lie in it. And until a politician is brave or stupid enough, depending on your perspective, to decide to nationalise or to regulate prices and say competition hasn't worked, they can do what they like. And that was what we decided to do. When you sell something, you don't own it anymore, so you can't control it in the same way.
Is there a minimum notice period for energy price rises?
Yeah, they need to give you 30 days notice. So if you're wondering whether yours will go up, they have to tell you at least 30 days in advance. I believe that was part of our Money Manifesto campaign that we do every couple of years on the site for your ideas and to put it to energy companies, and it was changed a couple of years ago. I think we may have had a little bit to do with that.
We've just moved in, so we don't have a year's energy usage on file. Can we still do a comparison?
Yeah, you can, and people get a little bit too worried about this. Look, the point is, if you're on an expensive tariff, while the less accurate the information you're inputting it is, even if you just say how many bedrooms you've got and estimate whether you're a low, medium or high user, the tariff you move to is likely to be cheaper. The only thing that might vary slightly is which tariff was the very cheapest for you. It will play at the very bottom. So you might not get a perfect answer. But if the comparison is telling you you're going to save 200 quid a year, OK, it might be 150. OK, it might be 250. But either way, it's likely to be a good move. So if you've got some details, put in your most recent bills. If you've got no details on your moving house, dead simple. You know, Cheap Energy Club and other comparison sites have estimators where you can work out roughly what you're going to use, and I'll tell you who's cheapest.
Can my landlord dictate which electricity provider I use?
They shouldn't, but if it's in a contract that you can't switch it, you can't switch it. But I would talk to them. They, you know, unless they're getting some type of backhander, it shouldn't really make any difference to them. I was talking to a landlord this morning, as it happens, who said he wanted to get the cheapest deal for people who were living in his house and he had economy 7. Could he move off because he knew they weren't moving it at night? So some landlords are good out there. So talk to your landlord, and if it's not in your contract, then you have a right to switch.
I'm only going to save a tenner. Is it worth me switching?
Well, if you're talking about fixing and only saving a tenner, certainly. With prices going up 8%, that's typically 100 quid, and that's just in 1 year. If you're fixing for 3 years and you could save a tenner a year, well, actually, you're probably talking about actually saving £500–600 by the end of that fix if prices go up as predicted.
Is it still worth fixing if it means I'm going to have to pay exit fees?
Exit fee, I think I covered this one earlier, to be honest, when we talked about short fixes. If you've got exit fees, you just have to weigh in how much longer you've got left of your fix and how much your fix is saving you compared to the new cheapest fixes. You've just got to do an estimate and what matters to you on that one.
I've switched before. It said I'd save, but my bills weren't lower.
That's a very common problem, especially when prices are being hiked. Now, the reason that happens is this. Let's say you're with an energy provider that's put its prices up. When you do a comparison, it's telling you how much you would save compared to what you would have paid after the price hikes, not compared to what you were paying. So if prices are going up 10% and it's telling you you'll save 10%, in reality, you're going to be paying the same as you were. So actually, what's happened is you've forestalled any price increase by switching rather than genuinely saved year on year. Now, the problem is most comparison sites just tell you the saving. You'll note on Cheap Energy Club, we actually say compared to what you would have paid, because it's something that's always annoyed me. And you have to be prepared for that. If you're moving from a company that's put prices up, the comparison is to what you would have paid. Your bills may not go down, but that's far better than them actually going up.
I'm not on dual fuel. I only use electricity. Can I fix?
Yes, the rules are exactly the same. I believe there are fixes that are electricity only. It works in exactly the same way.
And does fixing involve changing providers? I don't like change.
Well, the best fixes do involve changes providers, absolutely, yes. And really changing providers, same gas, same electricity, same pipes, it's same safety, only customer service and billing and price change. So I'd urge you to do it. But if you really don't want to, then you can do a comparison, look for the cheapest fix offered by your existing energy company, and you could then call them up and stick with the same energy company and move to its cheap fix. I prefer you not to, but it's better than not. That's it. Are we done?
That's
All
it.
the questions? Phew! That was a long one. I hope this was worthwhile. Remember, full information on moneysavingexpert.com/energy, and you can go and do a comparison directly if you go moneysavingexpert.com/cheap energy club, and in there, do take a look at the top fixes tariff. Top fixes tab. Those are picks we picked out editorially. The reason I put those there, rather than just relying on you to do it yourself, is because comparison sites just give you price order. Now, if you're going to fix for 4 winters, that's nowhere near the cheapest price. But it's about getting the gain of a long-term fix. So it's worth having a look and focusing on that page for which the best ones out there are. Hope you've enjoyed this. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.